All right, today we're going to be learning about equations, but more specifically, looking at equations that happen to have two variables. Okay, so some key vocabulary words I'm going to be using. Of course, an equation that involves two variables, that means possibly an x and a y. Those are your most common two variables that are used in equations. And then, of course, in a solution of an equation that has two variables is basically the value for an x and the value for a y. And then I'm also going to be talking about independent and dependent variables. And I'm going to go ahead and write the word cause next to independent variable and the word effect next to dependent variable, because that's a different way you can think about it. So now it goes on to reading here that an equation in two variables represents two quantities that change in relationship to one another. That's kind of like a cause and an effect relationship. So a solution of an equation in two variables is an ordered pair. An ordered pair looks like this: x comma y, but of course they're going to be values that happen to make the equation true. Okay, so we're going to look at our first example that reads, tell whether 2 comma 21 is a solution of y equals 7x. Well, keep in mind 2 comma 21 is an ordered pair. An ordered pair is always given as x comma y. So this means that our x value has to be 2, and we're saying our y value has to be 21. So I'm going to take these values and simply plug them in to the equation that I highlighted in blue that involves two variables. So I'm going to take out the y, and in place I'm going to put a 21. And then for 7x, keep in mind, means 7 times x. Well, x happens to be 2, as you can see right there. So now I just do the math here. I do 7 times 2, and 7 times 2 happens to be 14. Well, is 21 equal to 14? No, it is not, which is why the correct answer for this question would be no, because it doesn't work. 21 isn't equal to 14. On into the next example, a little bit more complicated, a little bit more steps involved, but again, still not super difficult. Keep in mind, 3 comma 16 is our x and y ordered pair, right? So x is our 3, and then our y value happens to be 16. So we're going to take these values and simply plug them in. So you can see that y is supposed to be 16, so I'm going to put a 16. And then 5x means 5 times x. Well, x happens to be 3. And then, of course, we have our plus 1. So we're simply going to do the math here. 5 times 3 is 15. Then bring down our plus 1. And what is 15 plus 1? Well, 15 plus 1 is 16. Well, is 16 equal to 16? Yes, it is, which means, yes, the ordered pair of 3 comma 16 is a solution, because 3 and 16, when you plug them into the equation, it makes it true. All right, now on into what in the world these independent and dependent variable words mean, what they stand for. So again, equations in two variables have an independent variable and a dependent variable. The variable representing the quantity that can change freely is the independent variable. Again, I'm always going to call the independent variable the cause, or the thing that happens first, typically in a story. The other variable is called that dependent variable. I call that the effect, or it's the thing that happens second in a story. Okay, and of course it happens second because it depends on the independent variable, meaning the independent variable happens first. So here is the story. All right, the equation y equals 10x plus 25 represents the amount y in dollars in your savings account after x weeks. Identify the independent and dependent variables. Okay, so it says in the story that your savings account, this is what you're doing. The letter y, or the variable y in this case, is the dollars in your savings account. Well, how do you get money into your savings account? Well, you have to start putting money in based on a number of weeks. So what happens first is you got to put the money in, because if 5 weeks go by, you're going to have a bit of money, but if 10 weeks go by, you'll probably have more money. So in this case, the independent variable is pretty simple. It's just the X, the letter X. The variable X is the independent variable, because that right there is the cause. This is you putting money into your savings account for an unknown amount of weeks, right? So I'll put unknown amount of weeks. And then the next part, otherwise known as our dependent variable. Our dependent variable is kind of what happens after you choose to put in an unknown amount of money. So it's going to be the variable Y, which happens to represent the total amount of money in your savings account. All right, so that's that. That's independent and dependent variable. Now, where the fun begins, I am going to give you a value or a number of weeks to try. So it says, how much is in your savings account after 8 weeks? That means we take the number 8 and we're going to plug in the number 8 for our value X, because X stands for weeks. So this is going to be Y equals 10 times 8, because 8 represents the number of weeks in this case, plus 25. So I'm basically asking you, how much money would you save in your savings account in 8 weeks? So all I got to do is the math, right? So it's just 10 times 8. Well, that's 80. And 80 plus 25, well, that would equal $105. So that is the number or the amount that would go inside that box, $105. All right, so those are some examples of taking a look at independent and dependent variables that happen to be also involving two variables in an equation.